Alright guys, so back to a new video, and today we'll watch this video by Sam. Definitely go and check out his channel. So apparently he made a 2D RPG game in just 1 month. This is something that I completely tell people to avoid, having very short term of pre-production for the game, because this could kill your video game, especially if it's a serious commercial project. So let's check his video and see what went into his production.
I've always loved the idea of RPGs, fighting monsters, upgrading your gear, and slowly becoming strong enough to take down the final boss. So I thought, why not try making my own? I'd never really done anything like it before, so I knew this would be a challenge.
Again, it's not just like making a platformer game in just 1 month. RPG games are very complicated in systems and really needs a lot of iteration and like facing a problem, iterate it and go and fix errors. So it takes a lot of time to perfect a very good game balance, and usually we give RPG games way much more time than a clicker based game or a platformer game, which always we also say if it was a commercial project, it should be at least 6 months of production to have a very decent title. So again, I totally see this as a very bad thing to do, but I guess it's some kind of challenge. So let's see what he achieved.
Originally, I thought it'd take about maybe a month, but spoiler alert, it took way longer than that. But before I could open up Unity and start building, I needed a solid idea. I decided to go with a 2D pixel art style.
Again, this is totally wrong. You should not do this. I told many people in the past videos to do pre-production. Solve the pre-production, decide what art direction would be for the game. So you just don't go and I want to make it 2D pixel art. It's not like that. You go do 2D pre-production for your game, decide what is the story, the narrative design, the character design principles that you're gonna use, and then choose which best art style would be for the game. Like if you want to make an open world game, of course you cannot decide of a 2D pixel art style for an open world game. So usually you go to either realistic or a hyper realistic 3D graphic. So again, pre-production is something that is needed in every commercial project. Then you do the character sheets and the other things that are related to the pre-production plan. But usually I really disagree with people just launching a project thinking, oh, I'm gonna make it this art, this stuff without no prior planning, because it makes the production very vague and the production timeline goes very like in a very not usual way. It goes longer than just doing pre-production for a couple of months, and it sucks a lot. So in commercial projects, always do a right art direction in your pre-production plan.
Like most of my other games, and a classic fantasy theme. The story, simple but epic. The world was once peaceful. No monsters, no magic, no chaos. But everything changed when a dark sorcerer named Velmor discovered an ancient orb of chaos. He used its power to unleash dark magic across the realm, creating twisted creatures and terrifying monsters. Kingdoms fell, the sky grew dark, and Velmor crowned himself as the ruler of the broken world. Only one kingdom still stands, Ilaria, weakened, crumbling, but still alive. And that's where our hero comes in. Once a humble peasant, now a sword-bearing warrior chosen by fate. His goal? Defeat Velmor and bring peace back to the world. So with the story in place...
Again, this is the worst way possible to make a story for your video game. This is the definition of a bad narrative design. So if you want to make a story, there's definite principles that you want to make before you make a story. There's world building, there is a shadow behind each character, why each character is doing certain stuff. For example, this story is not clearly showing why Vladimir is actually doing this, or why the main character want to do this. Many people don't just want to do peace for no reason. There is something that they want from bringing peace, as what you could define from where are these locations of the kingdoms. This is something important for the game. Many people would say, oh, it's a video game, you just don't need to make such a complicated story. The thing is, let's say he mentioned the first beginning area, which is the place where the kingdom is, where the player is. The problem of not making a good world building in your story means, is this place topical? Is it up a mountain? Is it near a river? These things that relate to the story makes your video game looks better and help in art direction. That is the reason why we always do this. It makes the art direction better, makes the dialogue more deeper, makes it much of a complete commercial game rather just than a very passion project, a simple small passion project. So you need to understand why people usually do this, because it changes a lot in the video game overall shape. So you need always to make a very good story with a very excellent world building, with an amazing character development and character backgrounds and stuff like that. You cannot just build a video game story like this looks very bad. Like, even if you generate something by ChatGPT, would be way better, and totally you should not do that. So yeah, this is something very bad.
Place, I finally opened up Unity and created the project. So once the project was created, I jumped right into making a sprite for the player. I did a bit of experimenting. Some versions looked too goofy, others way too serious, but eventually I landed on this one. It wasn't perfect, but it looked decent enough to get things
Again,
going.
something about character design, why story matters in character design. So let's say there was like a fat character that then in his later life went and become more fit. So for example, he is still like used to wear baggy t-shirts and baggy shorts. So that's why the character design, in the character design, his shirt is baggy or his pants is baggy. So that's why. So this small details in actual character design comes from the story background of the actual player. So this is another reason why writing a good story for your game helps a lot in the overall look of the game. And I know you might say, why just don't give him baggy clothes? This would make the character design less unique than other characters, because people will relate more with these small details without them knowing.
With the sprite ready, I moved on to animating. I made simple idle and running animations which added more life to the characters, and then I added it into Unity and started working on player movement and control. After hours of tweaking and coding, I had smooth player movement and a simple walking animation up and running. Pause. Now, it's pretty crucial to note that this took me a few hours to complete. I had to brainstorm the sprite of the character, then animate it, which took me a while to figure out. I had to look at a lot of
Again, things like shield, you should, like, when some kind of shield is in a city, so most of the people that is wearing the shield are the people in the army, and these people buy it from a certain blacksmith, and this blacksmith have like a kind of way in building the shields, and you know what I mean. This would make your full area just alive and just add more dialogues. Like, you can go and talk to the blacksmith actually, so that's where you bought your shield and stuff like that. So this is something that again makes a very big difference from a very passionate small project that's usually not a commercial game project and a commercial serious project. You need good narrative design and a solid pre-production plan.
And then I had to not just create the game object and code the basic movement, but also configure the animation.
Capsule colliders is better. I'm a game design principle guy, but like I guess usually in code the Capsule Collider 2D goes well and more smoother with 2D characters than the Box Collider.
So they play correctly when the player moves and stops moving. Now, this is just to show you that just a simple thing like this already took me hours to set up.
I guess this is top down, so there is no real use for Capsule Collider here. I guess if he did not, I thought it was a 2D platformer, so yeah. I guess there is no real big difference between capsule and box collider here. So yeah, that's totally
So
okay.
you can imagine the more complicated
That was
stuff
my
that
mistake.
came after this. Now next up was the tile map, and if you don't know what a tile map is, it's basically a grid of tiny little blocks that make up the game's world. Things like grass, walls, buildings, and more. Now since my game isn't purely top down or fully 2D, it's got some depth. So I needed to create both a ground layer and a set of interactable objects that the player could walk around and collide with. Now that part would be pretty tricky later on, but for now I made the first tile set, which consisted mostly of bright green grass, some bushes, flowers, and some dirt, and then I opened Unity's sprite editor, sliced everything into 16 by 16 tiles, and laid out the map, and here's how it turned out.
Again, this is something that many people don't know. This is something good. You should always do not scale pixel art inside the engine. Sometimes it makes mixels, not pixels. Again, it's like when pixels are in different sizes and it does not really look comfortable for the eye. Sometimes you could go away with using them, but usually try the best thing you can try is just make the pixel size an actual thing.
Now I think it's time to explain how I wanted the progression to work in this game. Since I didn't want to go completely overboard, I planned out 3 main worlds plus a final boss world where the player would face off against the final boss, Valemore. Each world would have its own unique environment and enemies to keep things fresh. The game would begin in the Kingdom of Ilaria, located in a bright, peaceful plains biome. This intro area wouldn't have any enemies, it would purely set up the story, so I decided it wouldn't count as one of the main worlds. Here, the player would talk to NPCs, learn about the world, pick up their first sword and armor, and officially begin their journey to defeat Valemore. After
So yeah,
that,
the
they
tutorial
travel
area,
to a dangerous
it
forest.
should have a lot of good, nice amount of content, and it should be the most polished thing you can, because first in production, because it's gonna be your demo usually, and it's an important thing to make the player hook up to the game. So you need a very nice environment for your first area, so the people really want to continue on with your video game.
A haunted graveyard, a magical cave filled with arcane energy, and finally, Valemore's twisted castle. Now of course this meant I had a lot to code. A full NPC dialogue system, tons of unique enemies, an actual combat system, a fun sense of progression, and much more. So to avoid overwhelming myself, I decided to start simple by building the Kingdom of Ilaria
Yeah, but
first.
if it's an RPG game, you would need also an inventory system and RPG. I don't know if this is an RPG tactic video game, so that it's not. If it's not a tactical, you don't need very specifications in the character stats and stuff like that. So you would need an inventory system, eye pickable system, and different map system also could be helpful in such video games. So you would need a lot, way more systems than that. So again, pre-production would make you understand which kind of system you would need for your video game. So it's a very solid thing to do.
I'd move on to designing the other worlds where the real battles would begin. Now to start building out the world, I began by creating some simple stone walls that would serve as the borders of the kingdom. This helped me get used to making obstacles that felt natural in the environment. And though it wasn't perfect, it worked
I guess
well.
he scaled it, like right there. Wait.
It worked well enough for
Like he a bit scaled it, so that's what we talked about. It's a bit different.
Now, next
yeah.
I wanted to lay the foundation for my combat
So like
in the environment.
try, in my knowledge, in my small knowledge, try not making this so the pixel size matches, as I know.
And though it wasn't perfect, it worked well enough for now. Next, I wanted to lay the foundation for my combat system. I didn't want anything too complex, just basic sword swinging with the idea that the player could eventually upgrade their sword to deal more damage. Here's what the sword swing animation ended up looking like, and honestly, I think it turned out pretty clean. Now, perfecting this sword swing
because you're
attack
gonna
took
need to add in the future like hit effect, the frames that get freezed for a second when you hit an enemy, even if it's a very little thing, the shaking of the camera, the post-processing, the hit effects, the particle effect. So it just goes away with the multiple stuff that you're gonna deal with. But I guess he needs another type, because he hit should unlock his up and down too, so that's something.
Took me hours to get right. I had multiple bugs where the animation wouldn't fully play or was just bugging out, but eventually I got it working and I could move on. Now, the way the sword swing animation would work is basically there's an invisible hitbox on the player's sword that checks for a game object with the enemy tag, and if it's colliding with an enemy and the player clicked, it will play the animation and do damage to the enemy. At this point, I turned my current scene into a kind of test zone, somewhere where I could experiment with mechanics before building the actual kingdom scene. And of course, I needed something to fight. I decided to start out with a classic, a slime. It would be the most basic enemy in the entire game, and I planned for it to appear in the forest world later on. I created a simple slime sprite and set it up so that when the player attacked, the slime would take damage and disappear when defeated. It was a small step, but super satisfying. Now, up until this point, all the combat systems I'd made in previous games were projectile based, so melee combat was a new territory for me. Getting it to feel smooth and responsive would definitely be a challenge. To move things forward, I added a health bar for the player and made the slime follow and damage the player on contact. Then I created a basic attacking animation for the slime that plays when it hits the player, and honestly, seeing everything in action was starting to look pretty cool. I also made a simple game over screen that shows up when the player runs out of health, and after that I decided the environment needed a bit more life, so I made a tree sprite, placed a few around the scene, and suddenly the world started to feel less empty. With all that set up, I felt ready to start.
Yeah, because many people forget to add multiple props and different props, and again, with buildings and stuff like that, this art would look way cooler, and you might need to just adjust the outline thing a bit and do some post-processing and some shaders for stuff like water and maybe fog and wind, so stuff like that could help the overall art direction of the game. But again, I always advise the some of the art direction is being handled in the pre-production plan, so you could not waste time in the production thinking how to make the game actually look good.
Actually building the Kingdom of Valeria, the place where the game officially begins. So I grabbed everything from the test scene, the walls, the trees, the tile map, and began putting together the starting area of the game. Now, for this opening area, our main character, who I've now decided to name Rowan, needed a new version of his sprite where he wasn't wearing armor or holding a sword. So I created a new sprite of him in his peasant clothes and added idle and running animations. I dropped him into the game using the same player movement script as before, and it worked great. Next, I needed to give the kingdom some life, so I found a free top-down pixel house sprite on itch.io, added it to the scene.
Yeah, again, you could use this for prototyping, but it would suck a lot when you are doing the full game, because pre-made assets usually does not look really coherent with your current art styles. So you either want to change them, like add outlines and make it a bit more like the shading that you are using for other stuff, or just doing everything yourself and do some heavy lifting on post-processing if you thought like you really need to make the game looks better with the less effort possible. Like, go with art style that you can make do and make a very heavy lifting inside the engine for the art style.
Set up the proper collision so the player couldn't walk through the walls. Then I wanted to make a new enemy that would also appear in the forest world, a goblin. I designed the sprite along with idle, running, and attack animations. By the way guys, I'm thinking about releasing merch, so if you have any favorite characters or any cool design ideas, leave a comment. I'll put a pin.
Again, merch and stuff like that. Yes, I know he wants to support himself as a YouTuber, and it's an amazing thing. I totally agree with you with that thing. You might want to make like a Patreon link, which is work way better with viewers. Merchandise, we actually do merchandise, which is in the video game industry generates a lot of money, just like the sales of the video game. So you want, and events, so you want to make merchandise in the you plan it in the post-production phase, like it's planned a bit in the pre-production. In the production, you start thinking, oh, we made this cool portrait of a character that could be on a very nice t-shirt or something like that. Oh, this pose in this boss fight is very nice, we could use it for a figure or stuff like that. So you plan this stuff which stacks over the art assets of your video game, and then in the post-production marketing phase after the release you make merchandise, which helps a lot, by the way, for generating a very good amount for video game studios.
comment on this video with the store link once it's out, so stay tuned. The goblin would be faster than the slime, and it would stab the player with a knife and attack more quickly too. Once everything was set up, the goblin was fully implemented and ready to fight. With that done, I refocused on the Kingdom of Ilaria. It was time to start adding the NPCs and little details to make the area feel more alive. I made a few NPC sprites, and since I had no clue how to make a dialogue system from scratch, I followed some tutorials from this YouTube channel called Game Code Library.
Yeah, dialogue systems could be either very simple or a hell of complicated. Usually in like commercial projects, it gets very complicated, especially when you start adding the accessibility options and adding the multilingual support. It gets very messy and way more complicated than the usual thing. So now in multilingual support, you need to support fonts that is not supported in your actual font that you are using. You need to consider the right to left things for languages like Arabic, for example. So you need a lot of differentiations in your dialogue system rather than just the simple thing. Also, you need to have like multiple choices, and these multiple choices could actually affect something in the game. So these are stuff that you really need to worry about.
Huge shout out to them. And after a few hours of work, the dialogue system worked flawlessly. I created this wizard NPC to be the first character the player meets, gave him some dialogue, and then started adding polish to the town. I placed lanterns around houses, implemented lighting, and added different colored tents, not just for decoration, but also to show that
this lighting is a bit off. If you want to make a good lighting, you need to consider normal maps with this lighting, because this lighting right now does not really look cool there. So people usually bake these lights, bake a normal map texture upon the stuff, and the light affect the normal map, so it gives more real 2D lighting, which it's used like in Dead Cells and multiple 2D commercial projects. It's a way better look for your video game.
Civilians.
Also, think of the shadows of the trees. So there's a shadow of the trees and stuff of the leaves, the rays of light going through it, and add more of a complicated, a bit of a foreground. This could like make your game look way better, and looking into pixelated shaders, so you blend in assets that does not really match up with your artist style, or like something like that. I don't really know how to mix it very well.
Are sleeping in tents since there aren't enough homes left after everything that's happened. The whole area started to feel much more alive. NPCs would now even turn to face the player as they walked by. I even added a few knights around the kingdom, including some guarding a gate at the edge of the town. If you talk to the gate knights, they tell you that you need armor before you can leave. That's when I added a sword and a armor pile that the player can interact with. Once you pick them up, you're allowed to begin your journey. I also made a small indicator that shows which NPCs can be interacted with. And with all that done, Ilaria was complete, and it meant it was finally time to begin work on the Forest of Whispers. The first thing I did to start was copy the existing Kingdom of Ilaria scene I had and delete the old tile map. Since this new area was going to be a forest, I needed a tile map that actually fit that. So I basically just recolored the existing one into a darker green, and after that I recolored the tree and made a fallen log that would be placed at the entrance of the forest.
Sometimes changing hui could work for different areas, but try not pressing that too much, because sometimes it just does not look good, or if you want to do it, add different props than your current ones.
Once I added the trees and set up the log's collision, I threw in a few slimes and tested out the scene. I decided to make them made out of bushes so they didn't feel too out of place. And after spending some time configuring their collision, I added a lantern near the entrance log and made a heart item that the player could find to heal. After that, I laid out the shape of the forest, which for now is just a simple path to the end.
You might need to look more of better level design principles, because this is too blocky.
I changed that later in development. Then came the final enemy of the forest, the treeling. I wanted this one to be much beefier than the slime or the goblin, and so I got to work on the sprites, and after way too long of adjusting the proportions, I ended up with this. I made idle and running animations, and for the attack, I gave it a green fire spit.
Yeah, you might need to work on glows. So this thing, if this thing glows very well, this could change a lot of the the art style, but maybe make it explode, because it looks like very fluidy or stuff like that. I know he wanted to make it like fire, but looks like slimy thing, so he could make it like he's an infected thing that explodes just like a creeper.
Deals tons of damage. Then I also made a texture for a gold bar and made every enemy drop them as a currency I would implement later on.
Yeah,
Once
economy system is very important for RPG games.
that was done, I made a placeholder main menu for the game with a cool background, and to make the cool background, I finally had to design the main villain, Velmor. He's a dark, evil mage with glowing purple eyes and a staff holding the orb of chaos. This is how it all came together. Now, you might be surprised to hear that, unlike my usual videos, the game isn't fully done yet. Yup, apparently you can't make a full RPG in 1 month and also have
Yeah, of course,
life.
it needs 1.5, like 1.5 year to up to 3 years of development to make a full realistic commercial RPG game.
So yeah, I'm still working on the game. There's a lot more to build, more worlds, more enemies, more mechanics, and that's where you come in. Drop a comment with something you'd love to see in the game. And
So again, in my opinion, you just need to reconsider your current GDD or pre-production plan things way better. You already have established that you could make a very good systems that work together and make something actually playable. It just, when going to accessibility option or going for real stuff in the commercial industry, as I mentioned before, that you need to know, and it's totally understandable for people that did not work in very big titles before, which is actually super okay. Most people are like this, so I'm here to give you, and hopefully if you saw the video, the advices that could help you make your video game look more like the biggest titles in the industry or the best indie titles out there. So hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely go and check out his channel. I hope him the best luck in his video game, and thanks for watching. See you in the next episode.